But first, I'd like to acknowledge the traditional owners on the land in which we meet today and pay my respect to elders past, present and emerging, and extend that respect to Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islanders here today. I can see some familiar faces in the audience today, so I think a quick snapshot of the IPP will probably be fine, but in terms of if anyone's got questions afterwards, please feel free to come up and have a chat. I am also here today with my new Senior Executive Service, or we call her Branch Manager, Kate Phipps. Kate's joined National Indigenous Australians Agency only 3 weeks ago, maybe 4 now, and is responsible for the implementation of the Indigenous Procurement Policy, as well as the Indigenous Business Sector Strategy and a range of other policies that our agency is implementing to support the sector. So if you haven't already met Kate, please introduce yourself at one point during the afternoon. I know she's really keen to meet as many people as she can. Based on previous conversations with people in the room, I know one of the motivations to start your business, to grow the business and sustain the business is to create pathways for Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander people. And that really motivates us too. So our job in the IPP is to make sure we're creating a framework that helps you access opportunities with government procurement. And we haven't just set and forgotten the policy. It's something that we do look at each year, each month, each week, to look at actually how it's actually rolling out. And it's also we also very much appreciate the views and feedback from people who are experiencing it. And that does inform the tweaks that we've made throughout the last 5 years. Let's see if I can move this. So what we're actually doing, so in terms of with the IPP, what we're doing is we're trying to influence the public sector as well as the private sector, which we don't focus on as much as we should. So in terms of the public sector, what we've been doing is setting targets to encourage procurement officers across the APS to engage directly with Indigenous businesses. Based on feedback, we've recently introduced a value-based target to ensure that when officers are thinking about engaging with Indigenous businesses, they're thinking across the value spectrum and we're not being concentrated in any one area. With the mandatory set-aside, what we're doing is we're requiring procurement officers across the Commonwealth to think first in Indigenous business whenever they're procuring anything valued between 80 and 200,000 anywhere in the country, or when they're buying something in remote Australia. And we're doing a lot of work promoting this, and you'll probably see more of these messages coming out in the next 12 months. One of the interesting things that's important to know with the mandatory set-aside is it applies to your normal panels that are out there. In terms of, in the procurement world, they call them coordinated arrangements, which apply across a whole range of government departments. Where it doesn't apply is what's called a mandated coordinated procurement, and there are a few of those in the ICT space. So Julian from the DTA is here today to talk a bit about those panels and how to get onto them if you're not already. So in terms of to make sure that you actually the opportunity is there for public servants to engage with you on both arrangements. With the private sector, what we're doing is when we're awarding high-value contracts, we're requiring those suppliers to meet targets for employment or for procurement or a combination of both. We've recently expanded the number of industry categories in which those targets apply. It was 8, it's now 19 as of only July. So what we're expecting to see is more and more organisations across a range of industries looking to engage with Indigenous businesses to deliver the contract that they've actually been awarded, but also the supply chain that supports the delivery of that contract. So hopefully you'll see your phones will be ringing a bit more. How to connect to these opportunities. I'm not going to talk too much about this because Siobhan's going to come up a bit later from Defence to give you some tips and tricks. But in terms of the easiest way to find the suppliers that are likely to have these targets is to search AusTender. To find the industries in which these targets apply, there's a whole range of documents on our website that you can use to inform your search. And to give you a sense as to what those suppliers are thinking in terms of what we're requiring of them, we've actually just recently released a guide designed for suppliers. So if you have a look at that, you'll understand a bit more about what they're looking for in the Indigenous participation plans and the advice we're giving them as to how to connect with Indigenous businesses. On that, I probably should plug as well, because we're also the team that looks after Supply Nation's funding agreement for the Indigenous Business Directory. In terms of, so what we do tell our suppliers when we're communicating with them is to make sure that they're searching the Indigenous Business Directory on Supply Nation to find businesses. And I'm pretty sure most of you are already registered on that. So what's happened? So since we started the policy back in 1 July, we've awarded over $3.5 billion of contracts to Indigenous businesses, which is across all portfolios. No surprise to anyone, around half that's come from Defence, for the likes of Siobhan and Tanya and, of course, Steve G, and the excellent work that they've been doing. What we're seeing each year is an increase, that's when I was going to go to this, an increase each year in the number of contracts being awarded, a steady increase in the number of businesses winning these contracts, and a more of an increase than this actually will show you in terms of the value of contracts being awarded each year. We've got a bit of a dip here, a spike here in 2017-18, that's thanks to Defence, and a very large contract that was awarded, which I think was in the vicinity of about 200 million. So that's kind of give us a big peak. And what we find each year is as contracts are varied, the value will actually increase. So this doesn't quite give you the nice peak that it actually is in reality. In the ICT space, we'd like to see more. I guess you would too. So at the moment, we've calculated, based on AusTender Search, around $101 million have gone to ICT companies delivering procurement for government. So it was going to be short and sweet, so that's what I hope I've stuck to my 5 minutes. But if you'd like to find out more about the Indigenous procurement policy, please feel free to reach out to myself and my team. We generally love catching up with people. If we can't do it face-to-face, we're getting really good now at using various technologies to connect. And we do value and we listen to your feedback. And while we may not be able to change the next day, it does inform the next sort of review that we do. And again, I just want to reminded people that Kate has just joined us as well, and in the afternoon, if you've got a chance to catch up with Kate, I know she'd appreciate it. Thank you.
Okay, so I would like to begin by acknowledging the traditional custodians of the land on which we meet today and pay my respects to their elders, past, present and emerging. I extend that respect to the Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander peoples here today. So I'm Peter Rymasz, Director in the Digital Strategic Sourcing Branch. So Julian Buckmaster works with me on the digital marketplace. So we wanted to just provide some information in terms of how both businesses are able to get onto the digital marketplace and also purchase or source through both the digital marketplace and some of the other marketplaces that the Digital Transformation Agency actually uses. So just, did I go just clicking through? Yep. Okay. So the DTA's main goals, as you can see, is around being easy to deal with, being informed by citizens, and also being fit for the digital age. So how do we do that for our marketplaces? So Digital Transformation Agency's got quite a lot of different remits and a lot of different work that we're doing. So we do want to be easy to deal with. We want our marketplaces to be easy to purchase from, easy to use, and be accessible to everybody to be able to utilise. In terms of, I'll actually pop past this one very quickly. So in terms of the arrangements that we've got quite a lot of arrangements, as you can see, that we actually look after and that we've got accessible through both the digital marketplace and also our various other marketplaces. And one of the big ways that we've been attempting to allow both agencies to source through Indigenous businesses is that we use it as a radio button, a very quick way of being able to locate those agencies or those companies. And you can see probably just in the corner just here, it's one of the first selections that you can make in terms of being able to filter out those agencies and being able to look for companies that are actually Indigenous suppliers to the digital marketplace. So in terms of that selection, it filters through. It selects those suppliers, and then from there, both suppliers and agencies are able to utilise those organisations. We do the same through our other marketplaces. So in terms of the digital marketplace, this is a specific selection that you can make again. So what I wanted to clarify is that we've got the digital marketplace, and then we've also got the ICT procurement portal. So they're two different styles of marketplaces that the DTA looks after at the moment. And there is a program of work going through at the moment to merge those two together. So that we can get, basically some efficiencies in that area. But we're very focused on being able to make it very easy for agencies in particular to be able to purchase, whether it's through SMEs, Indigenous businesses and other organisations. We do that, as I said, through those simple radio buttons. Now, one thing that we're looking at doing, and that is coming up on the 24th of November, is that we've got an event which is being hosted by the Digital Sourcing Network, which is called You Can't Do That in Government. So it's understanding on how government buys digital services, and it's specifically aimed at small businesses and Indigenous businesses. And if you're looking at actually being able to learn how government purchases and how you're also able to get onto our marketplaces and onto our panels, please email us at dsn@dta.gov.au. If we've got a large amount of companies that come through and actually want to come onto that event and be able to use or be able to get onto our marketplaces, we'll probably end up looking at hosting multiple events. We will be going through, it's about a half a day event, and we'll be specifically going through how do you join, what we're looking for, what do agencies look for, how do they actually go out and procure, and so we're welcoming basically suppliers to come on and utilise that event. And next year we'll actually be looking at doing very specific programs exactly the same as this, but specifically for Indigenous businesses. So we'll be running that, we'll be planning that probably in December of this year. And we're hoping that sometime early to mid next year we'll actually be able to run those events. They're virtual as well, so if you want to come in for only a specific part of that event, you don't have to be there for the full half day. You can join that at any point in time, because there may be a specific part that you're interested in, and you're able to log in and watch the event at that point in time.
Very good. I might do a switch with you, Pete. Sorry. Thanks, mate. Thanks there, Peter. Really encouraging to see some familiar faces, obviously, just in the audience, and some other companies that have been onboarded and, in actual fact, on the digital marketplace this week. It's a very dynamic panel and a dynamic arrangement, the digital marketplace, and we've got some good slides to show you just in a moment. That is, by extension, to Jen's very good pictures earlier around the government spend and just how that's now being targeted and directed in the right way to very successful and it's very important for us to stress that the actual businesses that are actually getting on board across the DTA panel arrangements, they go through some very rigorous testing across the various arrangements, and it's just great to see that they're actually emerging and winning the contracts. At the DTA, we work very closely with the community, the Indigenous community across the country. We've worked on the Indigenous business trade fairs nationally for some time, and we've actually found them to be very effective, and certainly to be able to meet and greet with the businesses and understand how that their businesses are set up and operating, but also to identify some of the opportunities, and that's the most important thing of all. We work very much in partnership with Supply Nation, obviously, NIAA, and particularly with Jen and her team, and PM&C previously, and the various industry forum workshops, and we're very grateful for the opportunities like this today, so thank you, Peter and Tuan and Defence and ASPI for that opportunity. We also work very closely with all federal government agencies, as you'll be aware, in state and local government and councils. But particularly with Department of Finance, and there's particular avenues and channels throughout finance. I'm not sure if you're all aware, the Senior Procurement Officers Reference Group, SPORG, and the Centre of Excellence we work very closely with in identifying, really key opportunities to engage. As Pete alluded to earlier, it's really important, the Digital Sourcing Network series of events, very successful venture. As you see with the DTA, we're often at pains to explain, it's very simple, clear, fast. We were like a startup some years ago, and we very much operate that way, very nimble, only some 250, 300 staff at the DTA, but we work very fast and very agile in delivering, opportunities for business. If we look at the slide here, in terms of the digital marketplace, this shows you a very good trajectory, again, by extension for what Jen had alluded to earlier, and the general broad sense around ICT procurement. But as you see with the marketplace and the hardware and the software marketplaces, year-on-year growth, the direct impact of a lot of the engagement that we've been able to consult with agencies and actually work with Indigenous businesses is starting to bear some significant fruit. And, the proof is in the pudding, certainly, with the way that we look at now, probably with a few contracts to land, we believe, in the next couple of weeks, it's nigh on over $100 million of ICT contracts and digital contracts sourced through the DTA's marketplaces, which we think is very, very significant. And it's just, it's testament to the growth and the capability and expertise in the Indigenous business community, which we're very, very grateful for. Just wanted to just show you just very briefly as well to identify. I'll just quickly go through this to the next slide. With the digital marketplace, it's been a very humble and lean start to our as a panel arrangement some years ago. It's a National Innovation and Science Agenda initiative, one of the key measures when Prime Minister Malcolm Turnbull came to power as Prime Minister in the Liberal government, coalition government. And the three pillars of the digital marketplace essentially were to increase opportunities for SMEs and by nature of that, Indigenous businesses, to increase competition broadly and also to drive government's access to innovation. And it's certainly delivering on all of those fronts. We believe the third pillar is the next frontier, and that's why we're looking at Indigenous businesses as well as key SMEs to drive that innovation thread and really help government's access to innovative solutions. As you see, the first 2.5 years there was a little slim pickings in terms of establishment. The volume was quite low because we had to really build myth bust and really build a lot of the buyer adoption across the various arrangements. Low in terms of the actual suppliers, but in particular the number of Indigenous businesses was significantly low. It was about 5 2 years ago. We're happy to report that. Sorry, I'll just go. Oh, sorry. So over the last 12 months, very, very significant in the sense that with that buyer adoption, with the increased exposure and awareness of the digital marketplace and the actual nature of the digital marketplace, very easy to use, very simple to use, very easy and quick for government agencies to source innovative solutions. We've seen nigh on 2.4 billion, and it's now the largest Commonwealth panel for multi-sellers in the Commonwealth, as we say. Just this week, in fact, we just ticked over 5,000 opportunities, which is very significant. And there's currently around about 1,800 sellers. But the really significant thing around the Indigenous businesses particularly is that we've gone from 5 to 50 in that 2-year growth, purely from the engagement, the connections with the Indigenous business community. Forums like this and our key other partners in government has certainly instilled that growth, which we're really, really proud of, and we want to build on that even further more, and such opportunities like today are just so vital to build that awareness. That's around about it. We just thank you for the opportunity to be here today and to and obviously to field some questions a little bit later as well. And so we'll be here for the duration as well with the after event drinks.
Okay, thank you. Good afternoon, everyone. I would like to acknowledge the Ngunnawal people whose land on which we meet today and pay my respects to their elders past, present and emerging. As you know, my name is Siobhan Reid, and I thank Dion and ASPI for inviting me to speak today. Dion asked me to come along and speak about the role that my team plays in Defence in relation to promoting procurement with Indigenous businesses. But before I launch into the presentation, I did want to introduce Tanya Martins, who currently leads the Defence Indigenous Procurement Policy team. And Tanya is supported by two lovely ladies, Nikki and Nada, who cannot be with us today. As the largest procurer in the Commonwealth, Defence takes a leading role in supporting Indigenous procurement opportunities. Our top 5 categories by value to date are building and facility construction and maintenance services, management and business professionals and administrative services, engineering and research and technology-based services, information technology, broadcasting and telecommunications, and politics and civic affairs services. But with 75% of future occupations requiring STEM skills, Defence also plays a pivotal role in driving the national STEM agenda. We recognise that Australia's defence industry is critical to the acquisition, operation and sustainment of Defence's future and current and future capability. And as defence capabilities become more technologically complex, the demand for skilled people, including those with stem cells within defence and defence industry, will increase. We find, however, that because Defence is such a large and diverse organisation, businesses, not just Indigenous businesses, can find it difficult to find the right person within the organisation to connect with. The Defence Indigenous Procurement Policy team takes an active role in matching Indigenous businesses to parts of the organisation. At the moment, we meet with approximately 1 to 2 Indigenous businesses per week, and I can see some familiar faces in the room, with people we have met on their journey to engaging with or securing contracts within Defence. We start our engagement with an email requesting businesses to complete a simple questionnaire. This questionnaire is a one-page document for us to gain some insights into your business, whether you have met anyone from the Department of Defence to discuss opportunities or if you've worked for the Defence previously, either directly or indirectly. We also seek details or testimonials in relation to the work delivered with other Commonwealth agencies or large organisations with a capability statement. This allows our team to do some preliminary research into those business units within Defence that are likely to buy the relevant goods or services. We then schedule a face-to-face or telephone discussion with Indigenous businesses to provide them with suggestions on who they might contact or who we have been able to provide their contact details to. I should reiterate at this point that the IPP team within Defence does not generally buy goods or services, but is there to connect Indigenous businesses such as yourselves to the buyers. Another role that the Defence IPP team performs is in relation to education and awareness. This is extremely important with a portfolio made up of nearly 60,000 ADF members, 16,500 APS and around 28,500 reservists. Launched in March 2019, the Defence Indigenous Procurement Strategy represents Defence's pathway to deliver on the Commonwealth Indigenous Procurement Policy. It has 3 priority action areas: committed leadership, inclusive culture and behaviour, and proactive communication. The IPP team use the strategy to educate and make Defence staff aware of how they can apply the Indigenous Procurement Policy and engage with Indigenous business. Committed leadership is the central element of the strategy. It cuts across the 2 other priority areas of inclusive culture and behaviour and proactive communication. Defence officials can show leadership by committing to champion Indigenous business opportunities, and leaders at all levels can show their commitment by promoting consistent and clear expectations in engaging Indigenous businesses, and this includes promoting Indigenous procurement within their operating procedures or through putting in place strong internal controls. And this could include requirements within their business plans or setting their own group targets. Creating positive dialogue and conversation about Indigenous procurement and business opportunity. For example, our Indigenous champion, Steve G, who's sitting down the front, has consistently promoted Indigenous business within the Estate and Infrastructure Group. This group contributes around 30% of Defence Indigenous procurement, with positive culture towards engaging with Indigenous suppliers and encouraging subcontracting arrangements with prime contractors. Leaders can actively seek to increase the number of contracts with Indigenous suppliers by looking for parts of their groups and services business that meet the IPP requirements or that may be able to provide opportunity to Indigenous businesses. Our Chief Information Officer group sought to do this by holding a number of trade shows where they showcased Indigenous suppliers providing IT services to their staff and senior leaders. And we measure the commitment from the groups and services by comparing their performance results. And we did that by comparing financial year 17 and 18 and 18-19, and we're pleased to find that all groups and services across Defence had increased the number of Indigenous contracts they had awarded. We are yet to compare the 19-20 data, but are hoping to find a similar pattern. When exercising their procurement delegation, delegates can also ensure they have exercised care and diligence towards ensuring the legislative requirements of the IPP have been met and the outcomes are recorded. They can ask questions and undertake steps to ensure they have all the information that they need to make the decision. They can also support Defence's mandatory reporting to the NIAA and to government. Inclusive culture and behaviour. So through their committed leadership, Defence officials can create inclusive culture and behaviour by promoting activities that instil a business as usual approach to implementing the IPP. As I mentioned before, this consists of the inclusion of Indigenous procurement goals within their business plans and engaging and educating staff on the IPP. For example, seeking the IPP team to deliver group-specific IPP awareness sessions or attending cultural awareness training, and developing group-specific guidance for including or capturing Indigenous supply chain data in defence contracts, or establishing IPP reporting frameworks within groups and services to monitor their contributions to the defence target and to support Defence's biannual reporting. And to assist with this, the IPP team within Defence has developed an IPP dashboard, which breaks down Defence's overall performance by group or service. The last priority action area is proactive communication, and this relates to disseminating IPP updates, progress and good news stories. We provide group heads and service chiefs with information on their group and service achievements and broader Defence achievements, and we promote Supply Nation's Indigenous Business Directory. Promoting business matching by identifying suppliers that could meet their business needs or key areas of the business where Indigenous suppliers have the capability and capacity to support. The IPP team work tirelessly in this place and are also linked into Defence's Reconciliation Action Plan Working Group and the Indigenous Cultural Advisory Group. We encourage Indigenous suppliers to share any good news stories with us to enable us to promote them on our intranet and internet, which is currently in development. I would ask that anyone seeking to do business with Defence does some research up front. Understand the contracting templates that are used by Defence. All of the templates are readily available on the Defence website, or in the case of the Commonwealth Contracting Suite, the Department of Finance website. If you do win a contract, you need to know what terms and conditions you'll be signing up for. Secondly, Defence is subject to the Commonwealth procurement rules, and therefore value for money is core to all procurement decisions. When responding to approaches to market, ask clarification questions if you need to. Address all of the criteria. It is rarely weighted, and if it is, you should be advised in the tender. Thoroughly review your tender response before submission and allow sufficient time to submit your tender before the tender closing date. Most importantly, if you are not successful, and even if you are, ask for a debrief. A good debrief will allow you to improve your tender responses in the future. As Jen already mentioned, make sure you're registered on AusTender. AusTender is a great source of information. When you are registered, it'll notify you of business opportunities. It will also allow you to search the contracts and panel arrangements that are already in place and with who, and when those arrangements are likely to expire. Lastly, keep your capability statement and details current on Supply Nation so you can easily be found by buyers and they can quickly identify the goods or services that you offer. As I mentioned throughout this presentation, the IPP team is here to assist in education and awareness, business matching and reporting. And if you would like to reach out to them, you can do so by emailing indigenous.procurement@defence.gov.au. You can also register for the Centre for Defence Industry Capabilities monthly Defence Industry and Innovation newsletter, or speak to one of their business advisors who will provide free advice and facilitation services to help your business navigate, prepare for and enter the defence market. Many thanks for listening, and Tanya and I are happy to stay behind and answer any questions that you may have. Thank you.